Thank you for everybody for coming today. We're going to be speaking about the experiential learning course activity application endorsement process for spring 2023 activities. And we'll also speak about the Experiential Learning Seed Grant during the second portion of this presentation. The reason we're honestly doing it in that order is because if you want to apply for a seed grant, you need to make sure that you have an endorsed course activity and/or you're already applying for that endorsement during the same semester. Just start things off. Again, experiential learning endorsements are for both course activities and programs. When we say programs, we do not mean entire academic programs. We're actually referring to maybe programs that you're doing that maybe fall outside the confines of a traditional class. We have those. In terms of the applications, we ask that separate applications be submitted for each course. However, if you are trying to do an endorsement of an activity that occurs across multiple course sections, that's absolutely okay. Just make sure to indicate those CRN numbers for us. In addition, if you guys down the road decide to apply, let's say you're doing something in one course activity and other instructors kind of want to jump on board, just reach out to me. We can make sure that sort of endorsement happens at that point. We'll discuss later on. There's a little bit of things to talk through with that, but we will try to expedite things for all of you. Again, we've moved to a fully online application to simplify the process. I will say for those of you who used last semester's in Qualtrics, we have retired the Qualtrics version and I have a new Microsoft Forms version, but it's asking the same exact questions. However, I think some of you are all going to like it because we listened to some of your feedback from the spring, and we're going to keep our fingers crossed that this application does not break on us at the last second. Unfortunately, ran into some issues, which is why we've now moved into the Microsoft Forms world. So we're going to walk through the application. So really quick, I'm just going to kind of show you all what this application looks like from an endorsement side. So you'll see here, this is how it's going to be done in Microsoft Forms now. Let me blow this up a little bit for you. Essentially what it does is it's going to ask you the same questions we had in the previous Qualtrics application. However, we've done some things in here to make it where if you answer certain questions, it will lead you to certain other questions. If you say no to certain things, then you don't even need to worry about that part of the application. So we were literally trying to speed this up for you all as much as humanly possible. So it's going to ask you certain things. And I know you're probably like, wow, it's asking first and last name. Trust me, this is to make your life 20 times easier. And so you all do not need to mess with DocuSign whatsoever during this process. All the approvals when it comes to your department heads and deans is now completely automated. So you do not need to check in with me during the process. If you are nervous about anything, you can throw an email in for me. If there is more than one instructor, normally what we would say is to indicate whoever the principal instructor is. Again, if you're trying to do it for multiple course sections, you can put in multiple CRNs on here. However, if you're like team teaching something, I would suggest to put in at least one of the instructors, whoever is actually going to submit the application, put them in there. However, for the seed grant, we'll talk about this later on. If you do have more than one collaborator on that, we do have the ability for that information to be inputted. So thank you for putting in that question there. Also, what we would strongly suggest before you get too far into the application itself, if you go to the QEP website, as you all see here, you're going to see a link called Learn How to Apply. You'll want to click on that. And on here, there is, all right, a preview of the application. We would strongly suggest writing down all your answers beforehand. And this is going to make a lot more sense when we start talking about the different stages of the experiential learning cycle. But all the questions that are presented here, these are the same exact questions I'm going to ask you about inside the Microsoft form. The one caveat of using this Microsoft Forms thing, and honestly, any online application portal that we looked at, is that once you submit it, we can't edit the answers, okay? So that's gonna be one important thing. So I would suggest that if you do run into questions along the way, just send me an email. Try to not put it in a partially completed application. So I'm gonna have to kindly say, hey, here are your answers. Please fill out the rest of it using this new application link. But again, we're trading some caveats for a couple little things that we got to deal with from the user standpoint. So let me get back to full screen here. So it will ask about the principal, instructor, or program coordinator. It'll ask about the name of the course, CRNs, number of credits, when is the class typically offered, and how often you think it will be offered. Again, we try to make sure we check in with folks, especially if it's been a while since maybe you might have like a fall only course activity. I try to make a habit of trying to reach out to you all. But I will say if for some reason you're like, hey, start of semester's coming, I did this previous endorsement, what's going on? Reach out to me. You can either email my COL Walker email address or just email qep@valdosta.edu. Either way, that email will come to me one way or another. So with the endorsement, with each one of these activities, we want to make sure that it meets at least one of the 3 goals associated with our QEP, with goal number 1 focused on undergraduate research and creative inquiry. Goal number 2, global citizenship, which this is not just study abroad. A lot of times we've been focusing on how you can speak about global things even in the local context. I will say there is likely going to be a workshop that we haven't officially scheduled yet, but it's going to be happening on September 20th with one of our experiential learning faculty ambassadors who's actually going to be speaking about actually doing kind of international focused things inside the class here on campus. And then goal number 3 is regarding servant leadership and community engagement. So a lot of folks are doing some of the service-based learning likely in their courses already. But just again, the goal is just to have at least one goal. Do not think that you have to have more than one goal. We're really focused on quality more than quantity when it comes to this experiential learning process. Another thing I do want to highlight too is that your entire course does not need to be experiential learning. It's just about maybe an activity occurring in the course. You may have it where it's a 2 or 3 week activity that's actually being endorsed. It doesn't need to be the entire semester. That's been a common thing that people have brought up in the past. And I can see it working one way or another too. Personally, I have one course that the entire course is experiential learning. And then I have another course where it's only like 3 weeks is technically experiential learning. So let's walk into the experiential learning cycle. So again, our QEP with experiential learning is based on David Kolb's research into the experiential learning cycle, where we focus on this 4-stage approach that typically starts with the concrete experience, moves into reflective observation, then to abstract conceptualization and active experimentation. And part of my goal in just a moment is I'm going to walk you through each one of these 4 stages and present an example to you all as well to kind of help see this come to fruition. First up, the concrete experience. Typically, your students are going to complete some sort of activity. So as you all can see here, there's a lot of different activities that can happen. In some instances, it might be that you're having them participate in some sort of simulation. Some of it's that you all are doing like training type of sessions where you're setting up activities later on in the semester as well. There's a lot of different approaches that this can take for an activity. So to give you an example here, this is one from a course that I teach focused on sports media production. So in this activity, just to kind of give you a large scale kind of bird's eye view, the students produce live game broadcast events. But when they walk into the course, they've never had that experience before, aside from turning on ESPN, Fox NFL Sunday, whatever it might be. So in the start of this experiential learning activity, I asked the students to go do a guided observation with an existing sports production that's happening already on campus. So it's kind of targeted with the things that they're observing about this event occurring. They look at certain things, but there are things to set them up for what eventually they're going to be asked to do in the course. So again, it's just kind of a simulation observation style experience that I'm sure most of you are you're familiar with from previous events. So moving on from the concrete experience, we move into reflective observation, where the students actually actively reflect on that concrete experience and discuss or even write about what occurred. So you see there's a lot of different ways this could happen through writing blogs, doing critiques, event summaries, journaling, rhetorical questioning. I mean, a lot of different approaches here, but the goal here is that you want your students to articulate that experience and actually get them to maybe verbalize or write it down. So you see what kind of connections that the students are making with what they saw in many instances. So in this example, to kind of build on it, I asked students within 7 days to complete a guided written reflection. So part of that timing there is I don't want the students to forget what they felt and what they experienced, but they've seen this these guided prompts before that guided observation occurs. So they know what's going to be expected of them. So the goal of this reflection is to see how the students are reacting to kind of a less structured learning experience where it's not someone lecturing to them for an hour or so. They're having to actually kind of figure out what is going on around me at a given point in time. So moving on from the reflective observation, we would move to what's called abstract conceptualization. I will say this is the one item that I have been getting a lot of questions about probably over the past year, where people are trying to figure out like, what does this mean exactly? And I think almost all of you probably already do this with your students. It's just we almost take it for granted, where at this stage, we're having the students reflect on their observations, reflect on those reflections that they already did, and they're in a lot of instances coming up with a plan in terms of leading up to an activity. So in this instance, like with my students, and I'll talk about this in just a moment, like they're coming up with a plan for how are they actually preparing for doing that live event operation? How do they know how to actually complete a production? In the science fields, maybe you all are creating some sort of theoretical model that you're eventually going to experiment with, or certain procedures along the way. In education, it could be drawing up a lesson plan before you actually go in and teach said lesson. Let's say if you're working with student learners. So a lot of different ways that this can happen through even concept mapping, just outlining certain items that you think are going to happen in this quote active experimentation phase. So as you see here with my students, I actually have them kind of speak about what occurred during their guided observation. They kind of use more of a think, pair, share model where I have the students who went to the same event kind of speak with one another and then report out to the class. It's really interesting because based on, it doesn't even matter if it's the same sport, just the given day, there's different dynamics that have happened. So if you find that your students, like you're struggling, like bringing all, I don't know, 20, 30 students into the same simulation or observation, have them maybe go to different times and dates with that. It could actually lead to an even more fruitful discussion because the students are gaining different perspectives and then reporting out to the class at a given point in time. And finally, active experimentation. So this is where students are using some of these ideas that they maybe came up with based on that initial concrete experience and whatever planning they may have done afterwards to complete some more kind of complex project. At this phase, you're typically trying to have your students participate in some sort of experience that relates to kind of like real world events in a way. So for like my students, like when they do a sports production, like they're emulating what you all see on ESPN, or if you watch college football this weekend, they're actually doing that. But in, let's say, the science field, maybe you all are relating it to current events that are going on and saying like, you might think this is just an experiment in the classroom, but here's how it relates to like a real world issue that is happening right now. So you're putting these more complex activities and whatnot in the context of those real world implications and truly giving meaning to them. And I think that's applicable for everybody's majors who are represented here through the name bubbles that I'm looking at right now. So as you see there, we even have like a nursing simulation, for example. Again, with these activities, when you all are thinking about them, don't just think about them for like your juniors and your seniors. Think about what can we do at the freshman and sophomore level to get the students ready to be able to do these more complex things so that they're not intimidating at times when they get to their junior and senior year, which I'm sure many of you have experienced, where the students are like, oh my goodness, this is crazy. I don't understand what's going on. We need to kind of prime the pump, so to speak, for our students. So again, as you see here in that example we spoke about earlier, the sports students, they would actually perform field work. They would produce a live broadcast that might go out to the public, might not, depending on how things are honestly going. Again, it needs to be a safe learning environment too. We need to make sure that the students can make mistakes, because in all honesty, with this one activity, it's a cycle. Again, experiential learning cycle, it's meant to happen again and again. So they're going to do multiple broadcasts throughout the semester for me. When I think of people that are maybe like over in the sciences or education, you all do multiple experiments throughout the semester. It might be different concepts that you're talking about, but there's probably certain procedures that have been repeated along the way that you're probably really trying to get at over time. Again, if you all do have ideas, feel free to reach out to me. You can even reach out to one of the faculty ambassadors as well, and then eventually even come back to me too. That's perfectly okay. That's why I'm here for all of you. So beyond those 4 stages, I will say those 4 stages, that's going to be what takes you the longest amount of time with your application. I would strongly encourage you all to write out your answers beforehand, and please reach out to me. I'm more than willing to review what you have on there. Just send it to me as a Word document, and we can even have a one-on-one if we need to, just kind of speak through things. Some people have liked that I will write comments in a PDF for them. Some people want a face-to-face. Some people, they're like, hey, let's just do a Teams call for 10 minutes. I'm willing to do all those different approaches because I know obviously we all have very demanding schedules, and sometimes we just can't all get in the same exact room, and that's perfectly okay. We've got through the past 2 years, so I think we've learned how to work in different modalities. So what am I asking as part of the QEP, what am I asking about you all as the instructors? Well, we're going to ask you all to have the students complete pre and post test surveys, which we will provide the link to you for that. It only takes about 5 minutes for your students to complete it, and it gives some good, valuable feedback that we'll speak about in just a moment of how that actually gives value to you as an instructor as well. At the completion of the activity, we are going to ask you all to have students write responses to 3 written reflection prompts. I will show you those on the next slide. And with those prompts, in terms of the responses that they write, we're going to ask you all to evaluate each one of those reflections using a rubric that we provide to you. It's just a 1 to 5 scale. You highlight it. That's all I need, to be honest. And just you email me that at the completion of your activity. And that's pretty much what I probably will need from you. And then the one thing we ask of each of you as the instructors and/or program coordinators is to write a guided reflection as well, to speak about what happened during the activity, and also what could go better next time. Okay, I will admit that for the most part, when we've done this activity, there's been many folks that have needed to maybe that have said like, hey, this worked, or hey, this didn't work, and how can I, and they maybe even asking, well, how do I do better next time? That gives us the ability to provide feedback to all of you as well. So just to give you kind of a quick snapshot here, these would be the final 3 written reflections that we would ask the students to write. You don't have to have them write it multiple times throughout the semester. This is just at the completion of the activity that we ask you to have them write at least 6 sentences in response to each one of those following 3 prompts. We strongly encourage you all to ask your students to give examples that help illustrate their thoughts as well. So you may be asking, why are we asking you all to write these reflections, and why is it of value to you? So what we ended up doing this past year, we piloted a project this summer where at the completion of the activity, during the summer times, we are going to work on writing essentially data reports for all of you that it is up to you if you would like to include it in your TMP dossiers, and or if you're going up for promotion, if you are a lecturer as well, maybe even include it in your AFRAP if you want. So what it's going to have, some pre and post test results, but it's also going to provide some quotes regarding the student written reflection. And this is a way to essentially have it where you all have something to actually put in your packets that demonstrates experiential learning, and that it's not just a line in your CV that might just get lost at times when people are reviewing things. I know experiential learning is a lot of times being codified as that quote evidence of effective teaching in the new faculty evaluation model. You all probably seen that it's part of the strategic plan as well. So creating these data reports is our way of trying to assist you all. But again, we're going to be doing those during the summertime, where my ultimate goal is that it's done by August 1st so that it's ready for your respective dossiers if you guys are going up for personnel actions, or again, you could just include it in your AFRAP at the end of the year as well. So in terms of with these experiential learning endorsed course activities, you're going to be asked some questions regarding like the number of hours maybe worked in a given category, like service learning. What I will say is don't like inflate your hours. It doesn't matter if you're at like a level 1 or a level 3. It's just us. We're just trying to get some tracking information, because an actual USG level code is going to be attached to your course. So you may be hearing that like some people are talking about, oh, the state might be looking at us from like performance metrics level. Well, this is a way to actually have true performance metrics that are seen at the state level. So honestly, if you get like some of your program people on board, you can kind of say like, hey, this is a way for you all to honestly get recognized at the state level with the work that you all are doing in your respective courses. Another item in the application is going to ask you all about is just items where you feel your students some skills that you believe your students might learn as a result of participation in your experiential learning course activity. And you just check which ones that you believe apply to that. It's just a quick checkbox system that'll be on the application right there for you. One thing I did want to go back to real quick to show you guys on the website too. When I went to that link again, learn how to apply, you'll see that we have multiple examples of applications, and these were all approved applications. just to kind of help guide you all along the way. And I do want to point out that we are going to ask for anybody who has questions related to any elements of the application, please work on getting those into us by September 16th. The reason we're asking for that is because we want to make sure during those last 14 days of the process that we're more so trying to mind like tech issues that might come up as a result. But I mean, if you have like a dire problem that comes up, just reach out to me. I will try to help you as much as humanly possible with that, because we never really know what might come up along the way. All right. So again, send any of those questions to my COL Walker, or you can send it to the qep@valdosta.edu address. And essentially the way that this works from an approval process standpoint is you'll submit the application and it will go to your department head. Okay. When it comes to me, all I'm kind of looking for is to make sure, was it completed? Hopefully you've asked me questions in advance, but it just comes to me, I'm seeing if it's completed before it goes on to your department head. It would go to the department head, and that person takes a look at it. If that person approves of it, it will go to your dean. From there, it will go on to the Experiential Learning Advisory Committee. It goes through a blind peer review process at that point. Okay, so the reviewers do not know who each other are. Nobody really knows who has what to review. We review that, and then we meet together as a committee, as a full, to figure out which applications are going to get approved, or maybe which ones we would suggest applying for it again in a future semester. At that point in time. So our goal is going to be having decisions out to you all probably by early November. So you'll know well in advance of next semester whether or not you've received this style of endorsement. So let's see here. All right. Any questions related to the endorsement process so far? Because I know some people might kind of quote check out if they're not interested in the seed grant part, and that's completely okay. Deb, that's a good question. So when the endorsement happens, when it asks you all about the specific CRN, it's going to be tied to that section. So if you have multiple sections that you're teaching, let's say in the spring 2023 semester, it's only going to be attached to your section, unless you inform me that you're actually working with other instructors, and other instructors are going to be kind of part of the process. If that's the case, we want to make sure those other CRNs are on there. And honestly, feel free to shoot me an email about that too, and I can make note of that. Okay, good question, Aaron. So what we would suggest is apply in this fall period for that spring, for that summer semester period. So we actually did this last year, especially with the seed grant process, where we awarded summer funds during the fall application round, because the problem is that if we wait to the spring competition, you wouldn't know until probably 2 weeks before the summer semester starts, which may make things a little too late. But if you run into kind of an issue where you're still trying to plan some stuff out, or you're not sure that the summer class is actually happening or something of that nature, just send me an email and we can kind of work through that, because that's kind of a potential special case happening, since obviously I know summer courses can be contingent upon enrollment. Let's see, Anne is typing as well. Love having two screens. I'll wait until she finishes up her question before. So, Anne, honestly, it's one of those. I don't have a specific success rate, but I think I can maybe reframe this a little bit. I will say a strong majority of the applications where the applicant has spoken with me beforehand and we've kind of gone through the application, we've addressed questions. There's normally a very strong success rate for those individuals. I'd probably say 80% or higher. Where if we had those meetings and we were able to work through any obstacles that may have come up along the way, we normally try to make sure that through any of those meetings, just keep in mind, I want you to get endorsed. This is not a limiting process. Like, I want you to get endorsed. So I'm going to do everything in my power to get you to that point. So you guys might think at times I'm being really pointed with feedback. It's because I'm trying to kind of set you up for success. So we don't want to make it seem exclusive or anything of that nature. This is, we want to welcome as many people as possible, but we are definitely going to make sure we're upholding quality along the way too, because we don't want to water down the value of this endorsement process. But we've seen quite the accelerated growth rate as I spoke with both the Mike and Michael, or Dean Savoy and Dr. Black the other day. We have more endorsements this fall than all of last year combined. So just to kind of show you, we know that it's growing, but we're trying to make sure that the quality is being upheld along the way. So I hope that answers that question there. Other questions related to the endorsement process at all before I jump into Seed Grant? Because I know everybody likes money. All right, everybody likes money. So let's talk about it. All right, Experiential Learning Seed Grant application. Again, this is going to work through Microsoft Forms. And you all might say, where's the link for this? Well, one way of kind of controlling that we know somebody actually puts in an endorsement application, there's a question at the end of the application where if you click yes, it sends me an email to say, hey, I need to send this person the Seed Grant link. So I will say, please don't wait till the last possible second to do your applications. Honestly, I will try kind of keeping an eye on my email during those last couple of days. But I would suggest it might take 24, 48 hours maximum if it's the weekend to get you that Seed Grant application link. So with the Seed Grant application, it is meant to have it where you're offsetting project costs associated with the experiential learning activities for the students. This is not the faculty research Seed Grant. So that's an important distinction, where Seed Grant is meant more so for faculty research. This is for student equipment, any other resources for the students to complete the activity. Okay. So we have that there. The experiential learning activity, it's up to $4,000. You don't need to ask for the full $4,000. I'm not going to say that asking for the full 4,000 is going to make your chances better or worse of getting the Seed Grant application either. However, you can use the award over a couple terms if you need to as well. We do understand supply chain issues. So if you think that's going to be an issue, again, probably send me an email about that. We dealt with that this past year where people ordered gear and it didn't show up for 10 months. To give you an example, I ordered a video camera last November. It's expected to come in December this year. That's just the world that we currently live in, unfortunately. So we do ask for the funds for the Seed Grant to be spent before April 30th. If we run into issues, again, let us know. I can work with Dr. Black and Dean Savoy, and we can work through issues. There will be a separate call in spring 2023 for fall 2023 funding. So we're always going to be kind of a semester ahead of time when it comes to this sort of Seed Grant program. Okay. In terms of who's eligible, tenure track and tenured faculty, including those with administrative assignments, are eligible to apply. Department heads and deans are the only ones that are not eligible to apply for the Seed Grant funding. Full-time staff, full-time lecturers, are also eligible to apply. And you can apply in a collaborative manner if you wish to as well. We've seen that work well in some instances, and a lot of cases, those applicants start talking about the scale of student impact as a result of doing a collaboration between instructors. And it can involve other eligible VSU faculty and staff members as part of that collaboration. With the Experiential Learning Seed Grant, similar to the course activity endorsement, we want to make sure that it lines up with at least one of the three QEP goals that we spoke about earlier in this presentation. We also want to connect it to one of the three student learning outcomes of the QEP, which again, if you just go to the QEP website, all this information I'm speaking about is on the QEP website as well. So if you forget anything, you're like, what do I do? Just remember qep.valdosta.edu and you will be good to go, I promise. And if something's not on the website, send me an email and I'll get it on the website if need be. I can customize it fairly quickly. So giving some examples of project funding ideas. We've had some people, for example, offsetting some expenses for Russian language and culture class, where basically they were immersing the students in this culture in Jacksonville and some selected venues. We also had one activity where they were offsetting expenses for science students to travel to the Okefenokee Swamp, where they're collecting water samples and processing those samples in labs. We had another instructor who purchased GoPro cameras to, let's see, record visual images of underwater testing locations. We even had another instructor buy even more GoPros that were observing animal behaviors over at Wild Adventures. I mean, we've had all sorts of different stuff, and please reach out to us. And I would strongly encourage, if you think that someone might not understand what it is that you're actually asking for, please send me an email and let me know, because I may kind of provide some suggestions of how to make that language more common for folks of what you're really asking for, and maybe give some strategies of how to add some context along the way so we understand what you're really wanting and what you're really needing for your students to complete said experiential learning activity. In terms of allowable expenditures, again, this is all online for you all as well. But basically, it speaks about that the supplies and materials should directly relate to the conduct of the project. Let's see. It could be all sorts of different equipment, but things are typically not provided by the department or other university departments as well. So a lot of different things here. This is just more so for informational purposes, but again, this is all online for you. And I'll go back to that link at the end just to kind of show you all where to look for these things. Ineligible activities. Okay, so faculty development activities, all right, are not going to be eligible for the Experiential Learning Seed Grant. Professional consulting services, profit-oriented projects, institutional research, graduate student work. Those things are not going to be eligible for the Experiential Learning Seed Grant. Okay. And then even longer list here. No, you can't pay off a grad assistant using this. In all honesty, it wouldn't cover a grad assistant for a full year anyway, because I believe that's over $10,000 to get a graduate assistant. Last I looked, it can't be for journal subscriptions, ongoing maintenance of equipment, things of that nature. So please be careful with that. Again, these are online for you all as well. So the review process, okay, again, another blind peer review process that we have involved here. As you see here, this is kind of what the scoring criteria is. We typically have up to approximately $20,000 per semester for the Experiential Learning Seed Grant. And we have to base that on the activities that are applying to it. What I can tell everybody is that the number of people applying for funds is grown every single semester that we've offered it. Okay, so we do expect to kind of use up the funding potentially, but we're going to deal with the projects that are submitted to us. Okay, so we have that there. With the application documents, it's going to ask you all to provide a cover sheet, different areas of a project narrative, references if you're using them, a budget, and use of existing equipment and resources as well. And I'll show you all in just a moment what this looks like on the application side of the house. And we're going to ask again the same exact deadline as the endorsement application. Everything's going to be due September 30th. And let me see here. Okay, so let me just show you really quick the Microsoft Forms part for the seed grant. Okay, so with the seed grant, and I will make this bigger for everybody. Again, it's similar to the endorsement application where I asked about the principal applicant. It's going to ask about your department head and your dean. Please make sure to check this information and the email address in advance. Because again, there's some automation I've built in the background and I'll try to catch typos, but sometimes I don't. So we have some things here, some basic information about you. Are you on track? Is it a collaboration? Again, for example, if you answer no to it being a collaborative project, you don't have to answer this entire next section. We're trying to make it easier for you. And this won't even appear there. It'll ask you, was this a previously submitted proposal? If it was, it's going to ask you about what kind of revisions might be made. Ask you, for example, the science folks and any research folks, are you messing around with hazardous waste and things of that nature? This might not apply to you whatsoever. Okay, things that you probably do care about the most though. Project narrative. So I got some feedback last semester that people were saying, hey, typing in the box wasn't really working for them. They're running into problems. I made it upload a file to me. Okay. You can use Word, Excel, PowerPoint, PDFs. If you think of a file that we have not come up with, send me an email and I will see if I can make that happen. So we're going to ask you guys to include each area of the project narrative at that point. And we built an entire web page for the Experiential Learning Seed Grant, which I'll show you in just a quick second here. We also have the budget. Again, we have a template for the budget for all of you. It's a fillable PDF that's right on there for you that will track all the different expenditures associated with the budget. And again, you can upload the file. So even for some of you, if you're thinking like, wow, I need to put in like pictures to give context and certain figures in your project narrative, please do that. That's partially why I wanted to move to kind of a file-based application, because some of you might want to get a little more creative with how you're explaining things to the reviewers. You'll also put in your total requested budget. If you put in over $4,000, it's not going to let you do it. So we did build in that limitation there. Again, do not use the $sign. I try to put a note there for you. And then again, it asks you about budget justification in terms of what things do you need along the way? Why do you need them? And things there. And I did have to put part 1 and a part 2 there because I had a 4,000 character limit, which is pretty much a good couple pages in some instances. So as I said earlier, you might be like, I forgot some of the stuff that you just said. That's okay. All right. So you will see here, we have, again, the preview of the application. We have examples of that endorsement application. If you go to up to the top where it says Learn to Apply, you'll see in the dropdown, we got Experiential Learning Seed Grant Program. And, okay, now we also have, it'll talk about the application guidelines, application instructions, examples of funded applications too. again, we are trying to make this as easy as possible for you. So if you want to work on it at 11:30 at night, you can go for it. I won't email you back till 9 a.m. probably, though, if you email me. Any questions from anybody here about things that we've gone over today? There's always a new question. Michael and I got Dean Savoy and Dr. Black. What do you think about this one? Talking about working with quote vertebrate animals and needing IACUC. I'm going to take a guess it's some sort of official kind of safety thing for the research. Is it okay if they submit the grant application prior to the actual approval?
I mean, I think so. I mean, you could just note in the application you're also seeking that approval. I think that's good that you would bring that up. So
that's a new acronym.
But ultimately, it's about working with the students also.
Yeah. So again, that's good context for us to have. And I will say, when we're reviewing your guys' applications, keep in mind our advisory committee and even our ambassador team is built where we have representation throughout campus. And we, like, if we need to, we will reach out to experts as well if we need clarification on things, or we might even ask you, hey, could you just kind of let us know what something means if need be as well. Again, I want to get you funding. I really want you to get endorsed as well. It's a win-win. You win, I win.
Dr. Walker, can I add something?
Yes.
Well, I do want to just reemphasize that the point of this whole application process for an endorsed course is that we ensure that it's a quality experience for our students. Lots of folks are doing experiential learning and high impact practices, which are great, but we can't monitor all of that. So that's why we have this structure, and Colin's done a great job. So you answer 4 paragraphs about describing the 4 section in Kolb's model, submit that. The review committee wants to, like, going back to, we would love to approve 100%. I mean, if 100% of the applications are great, that's perfect. But we do give feedback, and some folks have decided, well, I'm going to work on it and reapply the next semester, and that's perfectly fine. And we'll do this every semester. So if you don't think spring is ready, then you might be ready for next fall of 2023. The seed grants, however, again, we really want it to help equalize any financial burden on students. So a student who might not have the financial means to be able to travel somewhere or get some equipment or something like that, we want that cost to be as much as possible not passed on to the student. So that's really that. And we were also very interested in having our first and second year students. So if you have a first year student and a senior class, we'd really love to have an application of you with experiential learning with your first, your freshmen or sophomores, because that, getting them involved, that's going to keep them retained, and that's going to benefit all of us. But overall, I think it's a great program. It's really growing by word of mouth, and it's great evidence of student learning. So, but thank you, Colin, for that great walkthrough of everything today.
Absolutely. And I'm going to speak to Hannah, I hope I'm saying that correctly, asked about in the chat. So she was asking about like an endorsement where you're writing one where maybe you're using quote like kind of free software or free resources in a way versus writing a version where you're hopefully getting like that seed grant item to assist with the completion of said activity. What I would recommend in that instance is, especially in a seed grant application, provide context for the value of why it's valuable for the student to have that specific resource. Say, hey, it could be done in kind of that free way, but maybe this is like the industry standard and you're trying to prepare them for a specific career. Making those kind of citations, I think, helps strengthen your argument at times. Because I know free software / resources sometimes can only do so much and require you to jump through a bunch of hoops. to do something that might require some expenses to happen at that point. So, all right. Let's see, other questions from folks. All right, let me read that. IAB. Is IAB the same or different from IRB? I'm not sure if that's just a typo there. Okay, IRB, I'm assuming. Okay, so that's a good question. Honestly, I'd probably go ahead and be applying for the IRB if you plan on having your students collect said data, because sometimes they get a little upset if you ask them after the fact because you didn't exactly have permission ahead of time. So I would just go forward with applying for that IRB now. You can, again, similar to what was said earlier regarding the biology project, indicate that the IRB is in process, is already in progress. And I think that that's a way to kind of show reviewers like you're serious about the activity as well. Yeah, you definitely need IRB then when it involves student names. We totally get that. Yeah, so you'd want to probably contact the IRB office and make sure you have kind of the general idea of what you're having the students do beforehand, and where that data might go. In many instances, that's normally what they're worried about with IRB is who has access to it, how's it going to be secured, how's that data going to be used or represented, is anonymity going to be maintained, a lot of different things that they might have, but I would definitely recommend prep that in advance of speaking with them, because otherwise they may want to meet later on regarding that. But, and I believe if you, I'm trying to remember, if you, I think, go to the valdosta.edu website, that should be available right in the search bar. Yep, first thing, if you type in IRB, it will be there for you. Awesome. Any other questions from folks? All right. Well, I appreciate everybody coming today. And I sincerely really appreciate the participation and asking all these questions. That's really helpful, and kind of gives us ideas of things that we need to be talking about in future sessions. So please encourage any of your fellow faculty members to come to the next session. That'll be on Wednesday. But otherwise, feel free to reach out to me with whatever questions you all have. And I look forward to working with hopefully all of you over the course of the next few weeks.